back, everybody, to another episode of the Junkyard Dawgcast. I'm your host, Jordan Hill. With me this week is Kip Adams. Our guy, Rusty Mansell, I think he is probably in a bunker somewhere down there in the Gulf trying to hit out, maybe save par. I hope he is having a good vacation down there. But Kip, the countdown is on. As we talk right now, we are officially 1 week away from spring practice. Can you believe we're already this close to being talking back into a position where we're getting ready for Georgia football?
I haven't even unpacked from LA yet, to be honest with you. It's unbelievable. We're already talking about pro day and spring practice, and it's the most beautiful time of the year. I think this is it. This is where everyone has a chance to be national champions, and lo and behold, Georgia is coming off back-to-back national championships. So if there's anyone that goes into spring with hope eternal, it's Georgia fans, because they know that. Kirby Smart has this program built to compete for championships. Now that he's gone out and proven it, he's proven it wasn't a fluke. And now, once again, the most exciting thing for beat writers, a quarterback battle. I mean, these things just write themselves. So, I'm interested to see them get out there. It feels like we were just talking to them, at media days and the playoffs and the locker room. Like, I still have some of the audio. I don't even think I've written it all yet. And so might want to get that out there before it becomes quickly outdated. But yeah, I mean, it really just flew by.
No doubt about it. And there was all kinds of stuff that we continue to write about, in the meantime. And that's one of the things when you are a team that plays so deep into the postseason, that off season, it shrinks. It's not very big compared to what we're used to in other years. Well, let's start, Kip, with what is the big conversation coming out of last week, and it's how some of the Georgia players performed at the NFL Combine. You had 12 Bulldogs who went to Indianapolis. Several of those guys stood out, and I'd say probably no one quite as much as Nolan Smith. Just on the whole, what did you make of how Georgia's players showed up in Indy, and maybe what those guys did that could help them in the long run when we get to April in the draft?
Overall, it's a reminder that I think everyone, a lot of people are coming off the combine performances kind of, I guess, a little surprised. But from what we saw last year at the combine, who should be surprised? When we saw Jordan Davis putting up numbers that, again, Nolan Smith should have been happy with, to be honest with you, it's a reminder that recruiting matters. And then just kind of pulling it back. You look at Nolan Smith. You look at how 24/7 Sports does their rankings. What's the goal? Well, obviously, our rankings are kind of looking at the NFL draft. If you're a 5-star in 24/7 Sports, you're considered to be a first-round talent. And I get, a lot of fans kind of react and go, well, why would you do that? Why would you project towards the NFL, when you're talking about college recruits? Well, that's one of the few things that we can kind of verify is verifiable athletic data. And you go back and you look at Nolan Smith, you look at what he did at the opening finals in high school, winning the Spark Championship with the highest Nike rating. He put up basically numbers that anyone watching the combine should have been surprised at all. Now you can go back and go, okay, now him, Broderick Jones, these guys are in contention to be first-round picks because, they had verifiable athletic data, and then lo and behold, they turned out to be pretty good football players too. So it just kind of, that's not really a pat on the back, but it is a reminder when you look at the 5-star guys and at 3 and 4 years down the road, they are first-round prospects. It's because, we projected that athletic data. We can't project what's going to happen when they're not the best player on the field every single snap. That's the aspect to where the eval, you can't really quantify that. College development, things like that. But as far as just the athletic traits, that's what we're trying to find so that, we can pinpoint those type of guys who should be able to physically play quickly at the college level. So, yeah, Nolan Smith, he put on a clinic. The broad jump's impressive. The 41.5-inch vert, that 1.52 10-yard split are really impressive as well. I think none of those things should have really shocked anyone. It's more just NFL scouts are now able to verify this guy is extremely athletic. This guy has, some Von Miller traits. And this guy is still a little undersized and has a, kind of a thin frame as well. So that's still kind of that question mark before you start, locking him into the top 10. There are some question marks with Nolan Smith, but, I think athletically, he just showed exactly what, Georgia fans and those on 24/7 Sports should have expected.
Yeah, there were a lot of highlights to take from the Georgia perspective. You had Nolan, the way he ran, even that vertical jump. I mean, I'm thinking of the Patriot scout who was over there that just kind of looked at the camera like, yeah, he just did that. Darnell Washington making that one-handed catch and just kind of ho-hum going about it. Stetson Bennett with a really good 40 time. One of the things I've really enjoyed that NFL Network has done in past years, and they did it this year, was how they put them up against other players, kind of overlap those 40s to see how they did. And Stetson outran Baker Mayfield, who not that long ago was the number 1 overall pick. I don't think Stetson was perfect, but it sounded like he threw the ball really well when he was out there. I'll be intrigued to see, where he winds up. And obviously Pro Day, which will be, if you're listening to this live next Wednesday, will be the Pro Day in Athens. It seemed like Keely Ringo kind of hit or miss with what he was able to do. Robert Bill ran really well. Let's start with Stetson. What did you make of what you got to see of what Stetson did? And if you feel like that could help him when it comes to where he winds up getting picked?
I think the combine, it was the most important of all the Georgia players invited. That scouting combine was the most important for Stetson Bennett. And honestly, out of all the players out there, I think no one improved their stock more than Stetson Bennett. You put him in that group with Will Levis, and I honestly, for those with Will Levis, I don't know, like, you don't get to pick your group, I assume, but I think coming out of it now, you have to kind of consider that a mistake on Will Levis's part, just because Stetson Bennett outperformed him out there. And we're talking about a guy who's being considered in the top 10, either the third or fourth quarterback off the board. And Stetson Bennett comes out there, goes throw to throw with you, and does better on the deep ball than you after you told everyone you had a cannon. That was his statement. I know I have a cannon. That's why I'm here at the combine. And not only did you not have the strongest arm in the day, you didn't have the strongest arm in your group. So I think for Stetson Bennett, with him not doing the Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl, a lot was made with that. This was the venue, along with the Pro Day, obviously, but this is where he had the chance to stack up with other quarterbacks, and he did. And he honestly, and he measured in a little taller than what people expected as well, just to, shade under 6 foot. And you mentioned him outperforming Baker Mayfield, the quarterback who he was supposed to, to be on the scout team coming into Georgia. I think the overall profile, he may have moved up around, if not 2. I think coming in, maybe he's a 5th or 6th round pick. Now, 4th to 5th round, so I think it was really huge for him. And now he can go back to the Pro Day comfortable knowing that he showcased the arm. You can work a little bit more on the out routes at Georgia's Pro Day with guys that you have chemistry with, that you're comfortable throwing, and show that you can make those difficult, NFL throws, whether it's, off platform, out of the pocket as well, able to do a little bit more and go on script on air. And I think it'll be a chance for Stetson to continue to climb up the board. So I thought there was very strong performance by him. Not really worried about the 40 time. We saw a couple guys get hurt out there, and then people were talking about whether Stetson kind of came up a little bit on the 40, but now the fact that he was able to go through it healthy, looking back, was pretty key. And I think the throwing session was the most important part for him, and I think he aced it.
I want to get your opinion. Earlier on Tuesday, Todd McShay put out his updated mock draft, and there were a few other writers I saw that also put out updated mock drafts coming out of the combine. Looking at Todd McShay specifically, he had 3 Georgia players going in the first round. The first player off the board, Nolan Smith, he has going number 8 to the Atlanta Falcons. He has, next was Jalen Carter with the Houston Texans at number 12, and then Broderick Jones, number 13 with the Jets. What's your immediate reaction to those 3 slated where they are, and specifically with the teams that Todd believes will get them?
I think Nolan Smith will be the 3rd guy taken out of those 3. I still think he's more of a guy, maybe around the pick 20, 20 to 25 is probably, where he'll still end up. Because like I said, he's still, NFL edge rushers, you want them to at least be in that 240, 245 range. He came in at 238, just, I think maybe 6 pounds over his listed weight coming out of high school. Still, again, that frame is not a lengthy one. So there's still question marks there. I think Broderick Jones, for being honest, has as good a chance as any to be the first Georgia Bulldog off the board, because he came in, ran the best 40 time of any offensive lineman there, and came in an inch taller than what people thought as well, measuring, I think, a little over 6'5", 311. He is now definitely in the running for the first offensive lineman to be taken in this draft. I think he's got a chance to possibly go inside the top 10. There's not really consensus top 5 or top 10 offensive linemen. So if you need a tackle, I think, especially if you're the Falcons, if they don't franchise Caleb McGarry today, as we record this podcast at 1:45 p.m., they're going to need a right tackle. So right there, he's in the mix for number 8 overall, I think. And then with Jalen Carter, it's still, talent-wise, it's not even a question mark which one of these guys should go first, and he's a top 5 overall prospect. Scouts now have to go, or front offices have to go back and ask him questions, just about the night in question with the arrest, and why you left the scene. He's got to answer those questions for them, and just be upfront and be honest with them, and then they got to make that decision on their own. But as far as football player goes, I don't think there's a question that Jalen Carter is arguably the most talented player in this draft. And I don't think I know now coming out of the the combine, there's discussion about him going out of the top 10. I don't think he's going to be on the board when the Falcons pick at number 8 overall. That's just my gut feeling on this.
I think you're right. And like you said, NFL personnel, they're going to be doing their research. There were a lot of conversations, I'm sure, with Jalen, as everyone who's listening, I'm sure, is aware. He left Wednesday, came back to Athens and was booked, was released, went back to Indianapolis and continued to have those meetings. So, those conversations were going on. And I'm trying to remember, it might have been The Athletic who had a mock on Tuesday that to me made a whole lot of sense. And it was Jalen going, I believe, number 5 to the Seattle Seahawks. And I feel like that's sort of a place that makes a lot of sense for Jalen. And I think you look at the experience of John Schneider, the general manager there. Pete Carroll obviously has been doing this a long time. I think that would be the kind of fit that makes sense because, we've talked about it, even going back to, I guess that was December when there were those conversations about character concerns that frankly, raised all of our eyebrows because it wasn't something that we were hearing around the program. That, the thing that wasn't in question with Jalen was his talent. And I think if you get a situation with a franchise that has the kind of leadership that you need, that has the understanding of what they're looking for in a player, that it can work out really well. So I really liked that projection for him. And I think you're right, Kip. I think Broderick's got a really good chance, especially like 5 to 10. I can see a world where we see a lot of trades at the top because teams decide, look, we really like this quarterback. We don't want someone to go get him. And then those teams that either move back or are still sitting in that 5 to 10 range, you're kind of going with what's the best of what's left. What are you going to go get? A team maybe like the Chicago Bears who move back and know they have Justin Fields. Say, well, let's get him some protection, maybe get him an offensive lineman like Broderick Jones. I think that's a really intriguing. I think one of the big winners, to your point, out of the combine was Broderick Jones because he's got a really good chance to be one of the top offensive tackles taken. And in a draft with a lot of talent, people love to get an offensive tackle, know they're shoring up the situation for their quarterback. And yeah, I don't see the Falcons getting Nolan Smith. I think that's a bit of an overreaction to have him that high. I do think he's a guy that can slide into that first round. And I think the biggest thing is just his size. I think that teams are going to have to figure out what they want to do with him. And, I could see maybe 4 Georgia players going, and the big question mark, of the guys we're not mentioning is Darnell Washington. I think that the fact that, we get to probably pick 22 to pick 31, somewhere in that range, someone decides, look, we want a difference maker at tight end. And, a team I continue to see mentioned for Darnell is the Jacksonville Jaguars, even though they're getting, I think they're planning to franchise tag Evan Ingram. Put him in there with Trevor Lawrence. I think that could be a really, really effective offense.
Yeah, I mentioned Broderick Jones now being in the mix to be the number one offensive tackle, which I think, just based on the fact that Peter Skoronski at Northwestern didn't work out, Paris Johnson did not separate himself from Broderick Jones in any way. But then you take that to the tight end position with Darnell Washington, and you look at multiple guys, this deep tight end class. Dalton Kincaid mentioned as a guy that's a first round pick. Luke Musgrave out of Oregon State also mentioned. But I go back just watching the sled drill, and then watching Michael Mayer from Notre Dame, who again has been mentioned as a top 20 overall prospect in this draft. I think the Green Bay Packers have been mentioned with him a lot as far as just that connection of where he might go. Him being the number one overall tight end, an outstanding player in college, but you just watch that sled drill and you watch, he basically face plants that drill, gets it 3 or 4 yards down the line, and Darnell just comes up and just it looks like he's sprinting. It looks like he's running his 40 with that sled, and then between that and his knocking the coach off the screen. I think Georgia players, as far as their overall strength, Broderick Jones, Darnell Washington, both now in the mix to be the number one player taken at their position. And I think if Darnell Washington is not taken in the first round, it's probably because, only one or no tight ends were taken in the first round. It starts getting down to position premium. If no one takes the tight end in the first round, that's the reason why he goes in the second round. I think he's locked himself inside the top 30 overall prospects in this draft. There's really, not much you can really question about him right now. We already knew he was an outstanding blocker. He showed, one of the more impressive, blocks in those drills you have, and then made probably the catch of the combine, just running that fade route, with the one-handed catch there. I don't think. And then the fact that he measured at 6'6.5", stood next to a 6'7" guy and was clearly an inch taller than him, which, I think that was pretty interesting, just seeing, Ian Rappaport with the photo. Clearly Darnell Washington looks taller than the other tight end, I believe, from Old Dominion that was 6'7", Luke Kuntz, who also had an outstanding combine performance, kind of matched Darnell, drill for drill as far as his physical attributes. But again, Darnell, I think, really made a claim to be the number one over tight end taken. And, if a team wants a tight end in the first round, I think Darnell's probably going to be that guy.
We're going to take a quick break, come back just for a few minutes, and talk a little bit ahead about spring practice and what we're expecting to see. Welcome back, everybody. Well, let's just get right into it, Kip. A week from today, as we're recording, we're going to be watching a little bit of spring ball. Georgia will be back for the first of 15 practices. And just generally, when you look at this team going into a new season and specifically going into spring, what are you most interested in looking at with this team and the storylines we may be following for the rest of spring?
Yeah, it's interesting because the low-hanging fruits, you want to see the new quarterbacks. But I think the easier answer would just be, what does this offense look like under Mike Bobo? Do they come out kind of showing that, the same formations? Did Mike Bobo find a couple walk-on fullbacks to feature, in his offense this spring and draw the ire of Georgia fans all over who are worried that, that this strong passing offense, the air attack that they saw last year, it was a 1-year thing and it's going away. I don't think that's going to be the case, but we have to go out there and confirm that, as reporters. And so that's definitely an aspect. And then we're talking about the draft again. Well, once again, you got to talk about who's going to replace all these guys. There's a lot of stars out there once again. Whether it's Nolan Smith, Robert Beal out there with, maybe the surprise 40 of the whole group. I mean, you talk about someone who I would have told you I thought maybe a low 4.6, would have been in the mix, but the man goes out there and just blows it up with a sub 4.5 40, which I think was the third best among edge guys. He might get himself drafted, which is just what a story for him and his path at Georgia. Someone on the Junkyard posted that photo of him and Brenton Cox, on the doing the stadiums, and kind of the path those two players took since they got arrested early in their Georgia career. It's just been incredible to watch Robert Beal's journey, but also who's going to be the next group of edge guys, and with Marvin Jones Jr. a little banged up, you're going to get to see some of these freshman signees that the Georgia just brought in. I would imagine that a couple of those guys play pretty big roles this spring. So you get a chance to see how those evals were for Georgia and just overall, the next group of guys that we'll be talking about at the NFL Combine this time next year.
For me, obviously, quarterback, we're going to talk it to death. We're going to watch it. And, any move they make, it's going to be all in the notebooks, and y'all will be watching for that. But offensive line, I want to see what those five guys, who is playing among the first team. Is Amarius Mims staying at right tackle? Does he move to left tackle? Is Ernest Green in the mix? Do they move Xavier Truss outside, let him play tackle? I feel like there's a number of options they can take on the offensive line. Defensive line, who sort of steps up to help replace the production of a Jalen Carter? Do we see a guy like Bear Alexander take steps forward? What does that look like, along with some of the veterans back like Nazir Stackhouse and Zion Logue as well? Battles also at cornerback. I'm expecting Dalen Everett and Nyland Green to fight for that job that Keely Ringo has vacated. There's going to be no shortage of stories. And as much as I enjoy writing this little in-between content, it's going to be nice to be back out there watching them go at it and seeing who can kind of separate themselves before G-Day.
Yeah. And you mentioned, Keely Ringo, who's going to replace him, a guy that's kind of been out there locking down one side of the field for 2 years. And, a guy like Dalen Everett, is this the spring where he kind of makes that move? But then you also just know that Nyland Green's right there. I think that competition is going to be one of the more spirited ones in the spring. I mean, Julian Humphrey, freshman AJ Harris, there are some talented defensive backs there who are chomping at the bit to start opposite Kamari Lassiter. So I think that that's going to be an interesting battle. And then obviously the Chris Smith at safety, he did not have the strongest combine, but we knew him, just like Kenny McIntosh. These were not guys that were going to go out there and run 4.40s, but big time impact at Georgia at that safety position the last couple of years of Chris Smith. Will that be Dan Jackson, or do you see, once again, just like last year with Malachi Starks, you see Joel Aguirre, you see him step right in and be an instant impact player as a 5-star safety once again for Georgia.
Well, we're going to wrap this episode up. I'm actually getting ready to go hop on a men's basketball Zoom to get ready for that SEC tournament opener on Wednesday night against LSU. But just to kind of get everybody on the same page with us, we will be back on Thursday. We will have a podcast where we're going to draft our spring breakouts. Skip and I are going to pick from a select list some of the guys that really haven't had outstanding seasons yet at Georgia, and say these guys could be who turn our heads in spring ball this year. And then on Monday, we'll try to have another episode where we're going to do a mailbag and answer your questions about this team going into spring ball. So we're going to wrap it up right there. Thanks for Kip for popping on. Appreciate everybody who listened to this live, who is listening to this after the fact. We really appreciate all of your support. Until Thursday, everybody keep it locked down and get ready for spring ball. It's going to be here before y'all know it. So for Kip Adams, I'm Jordan Hill. Until next time, take care.